100 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 10,000 ounces of silver, it was a ratio of 16 to 1. So if we had a ratio today of 16 to 1, where would that bring silver? It'd give you a number of what, like...
It depends where gold is at that time, but yeah, in terms of ounces.
Well, no, but I'm saying if gold doesn't change, if gold didn't change and you had a ratio of 16 to 1...
Yeah, they'd be a $200, $220 silver or something like that, yeah.
Yeah, then you'd have, a couple $1 million, and yeah, you could retire on that. But that's not the reality. But that reality will occur. You will get a much, much lower silver-gold ratio once one of the two fails to deliver off of either COMEX or LBMA. I mean, we'll at least come down to 25 or 30 to 1 ratio from the current 90. So your silver is going to outperform gold 3 to 1 if, when that happens. But under current pricing, 10,000 ounces of silver, you can't retire on that. I know what it's 250 years next July 4th, but I'm not sure what they're getting at.
I think that that's a date that's been floated by, for one, former Trump financial advisor from the first administration, Dr. Judy Shelton, who said that Trump should announce a 50-year-long bond redeemable at maturity in gold on that date.
Okay, well, that's assuming that we do have the gold. There's not been an audit since 1956. I personally assume that we do not have the gold, because if we did, why wouldn't we show an audit every year? Or an audit every 5 years or 10 years or whatever? There's not been an audit in, 70 years. The U.S. can't just go out and just gobble up gold because there's not that type of size available. And to answer his question, yes, I still believe that. And a failure to deliver by COMEX or by LBMA will certainly be a marker that the Chinese will look at and say, hey, wait a minute, there's no more gold to be had. Let's pull the plug. And whatever number they decide on, I think the West is probably going to revalue first, and it's not going to work. The first reset is not going to work.
For nearly 70 years, Americans and the world have been left in the dark about U.S. gold reserves. Critics argue that if the gold truly exists, why hide it? Calls for an independent audit have gone unanswered, fueling suspicions. Meanwhile, gold demand is surging worldwide, yet supplies remain tight. Unlike dollars, gold cannot simply be printed. Should the U.S. attempt a reset without verifiable reserves, nations like China, now the world's largest gold buyer, may use this as leverage. Failure to deliver on gold promises could trigger a cascade of doubt, undermining the dollar's role in global trade.
You may see the East or / Mother Nature mark gold and marked assets to fair logical, water seeks its own level to values that make sense.
We have a question here, again, looking at the sort of the end game as people are getting really pinched in the middle class, even those who've been perhaps using precious metals as a physical savings account over the time. 3 different viewers here, but I'm going to merge their 3 questions. Mr. Symbolic 7 says, if you talk to precious metals dealers, the older silver holders are bringing in bags of pre-65 silver to sell as their bills are stacking up now. We also have a comment here from Chuck Miles 56, who says, what if you sold all your silver to pay bills? Is it just too late to start stacking over? Seems like a joke and time is running short. And I'll get to the third one after that. But just this plight of people who've been longtime stackers and now are being pinched with current rising taxes and other bills that they have, whether it's medical or other bills.
Yeah, well, first off, it's never too late to stack, because when you're stacking, you're getting capital out of dollars or yen or euros or whatever currency, and you're putting it into real money that can't default. So 1 ounce is better than no ounces.
Analysts warn that the financial reset will not happen in a single stroke. If the West attempts to revalue gold first, it may fail without credibility. Instead, the East, particularly China and Russia, could dictate the new standard. History shows that markets, like nature, eventually correct themselves. Once physical gold supply on exchanges like COMEX or the LBMA dries up, the illusion of endless paper gold will shatter. At that moment, gold and silver may be revalued not by politicians but by market forces, exposing the fragility of today's debt-driven economy. The realignment could redefine wealth worldwide.
What was the first part of the question?
The first part of the question is just a recognition that precious metals dealers are reporting to this individual that people tend to be coming in to sell their pre-65 silver as their bills are stacking up at home.
Well, the question is, why is that happening? My thought process is there's not enough money. There's not money on the streets. People are being pinched. And I know you've seen the same thing. I've seen more sales in the last 9 months than I had in the previous 15 years combined. So we're seeing mass selling. Occasionally you got somebody who's selling to buy a property or a home or whatever, or somebody selling to buy a business or whatever. But I think, and I generally ask, why are you selling it? And I've only had one person tell me in this year, oh, well, I'm taking my profit. And, of course I asked, you're taking your profit, where are you going to put the money? What's the alternative? And they said, oh, I'm just going to put it into a CD. And I just, what can you say to that? I mean, that's just wrong think. But what's happening, people are liquidating metal to live.
Amid rising inflation, taxes, and healthcare costs, many longtime silver holders are being forced to sell. Dealers report unprecedented volumes of pre-1965 U.S. silver coins, once cherished savings, now being liquidated to pay bills. What was intended as generational wealth is becoming emergency cash. Yet experts caution against selling everything at once. Instead, small liquidations for immediate needs may preserve long-term gains as silver prices climb. History suggests that in times of systemic reset, those holding tangible assets outside the banking system retain a critical advantage, even as paper wealth evaporates. The question is, how long can individuals hold on?
And you say that's just an acknowledgement of the reality of the hard times, and in that case, people are tapping their stack of metals as an external savings account that they've used as a tangible savings account outside the banking system. And your view is, yes, do that if you have to, but only to the extent that you have to. Try to maintain that asset outside the banking system as long as you can.
Yeah, and I would say, because nobody knows, when the plug is going to be pulled. I mean, my advice would be don't liquidate so that you have a year's worth of bills. You might want to liquidate so that you have only 2 months worth of bills, and then 2 months from now, liquidate again. Because the longer this goes, the higher the price of silver and the more the likelihood that we have the reset where all of a sudden, wow, you've got a lot of capital, and that's going to happen at the same time that you see paper assets, bonds and stocks drop in value. So your relative position, the more metal you hold, or if you can hold it long enough, you'll have capital. I'm not going to say you're going to be the winner, because that's not the type of world. I've always said, be careful what you wish for. $100,000 gold sounds good to somebody with gold, but what kind of world will we be living in?
Related question here from Chuck Zerbel, who says, and I know this is a personal and individual question, we can't give individualized financial advice, but at least if you could address the principles involved. Chuck Zerbel says, I have 10,000 silver eagles and I want to retire on this. I'm over 70 years old. Am I going to be able to retire soon?
Some investors pin their retirement hopes on silver. For example, holding 10,000 ounces may seem substantial, yet at current prices, it equates to around $400,000, far from sufficient for long-term security. Historically, 10,000 ounces was a fortune, but today's manipulated silver-to-gold ratio of 90-to-1 undervalues it severely. If silver reverts to its historical 16-to-1 ratio, or even 25-to-1, its value could multiply, turning modest holdings into millions. For older investors, timing is crucial. A global reset could elevate silver dramatically, but until then, the challenge remains. Can one afford to wait for history to correct the imbalance?
I would say after you get a reset, yeah, 10,000 ounces of silver should do it in today's pricing. No, obviously, $400,000 is not, you're going to burn through that even if you just did 20,000 a year, that's obviously not enough to live on, but 20,000 a year, it's going to be gone in 20 years. Now, just from a historical perspective, Dunnigan, you could go back a couple hundred years ago and all the time before 200 years ago. If you had 1,000 ounces of gold or 10,000 ounces of silver, you were considered a very wealthy person. And that was all you needed for the rest of your life. Now, because of the suppression, the paper derivative suppression of both gold and silver pricing, that no longer holds.
Are there guidelines that you look to in the current pricing environment for people to consider that how should they adjust their thinking given that the world we now live in for that same calculation they're trying to make as far as what's a retirable amount?
That would require me to put that to a calculator. Obviously, if you've got 1,000 ounces of gold, you've got $3.5 million. That's probably enough to retire on. I mean, 1,000 ounces, if you got 1,000 ounces of gold, that's enough to retire on. But if you got 10,000 ounces of silver, which,
The debate over gold and silver is not just about prices. It's about survival in a changing world. If precious metals soar to extreme valuations, it may coincide with a breakdown of financial order, making winning a relative concept. A $100,000 gold price could mean currencies have collapsed and everyday life is in turmoil. For now, stacking metals is not about speculation, but preservation, insurance against systemic failure. The longer one can hold, the greater the protection. As history nears another turning point, the role of gold and silver may once again shift from forgotten relics to the foundation of trust.
100 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 10,000 ounces of silver, it was a ratio of 16 to 1. So if we had a ratio today of 16 to 1, where would that bring silver? It'd give you a number of what,
It depends where gold is at that time, but yeah, in terms of ounces.
Well, no, but I'm saying if gold doesn't change, if gold didn't change and you had a ratio of 16 to 1.
Yeah, there'd be a $200, $220 silver, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, then you'd have, a couple $1 million, and yeah, you could retire on that. But that's not the reality. But that reality will occur. You will get a much, much lower silver-gold ratio once one of the two fails to deliver off of either COMEX or LBMA. I mean, we'll at least come down to 25 or 30 to 1 ratio from the current 90. So your silver is going to outperform gold 3 to 1 if, when that happens. But under current pricing, 10,000 ounces of silver, you can't retire on that.